Food. So, welcome, friends. Stephen Feder here from United in Learning. Delightful as always to join with you from across the country. Just as we were gathering here, we were all chit-chatting about what a difference these webinars make. And certainly from my perspective, sitting here in north of Toronto, it's just such a joy to be able to facilitate the connections and allow people to talk to each other across this whole nation. I think part of what we have built together is a stronger sense that we are part of a big organization and that we have each other's back. And a lot of credit goes to Eric and Clyde, who have given up their time and helped to build that sense of community in this group. So many, many thanks to them and to those of you who join us faithfully every time we're on. I'm going to turn things over to Eric to open our meeting. Eric, over to
Oh,
you.
okay, and good evening, folks. And shout out to Angelica and Clyde, whose voices you'll hear more and more as we go along. But it's very much a team effort, and we've got a fair bit of news, but none of the stuff that makes you go, "Oh no," unless you're feeling that way about the mail strike. So, as is our custom, I've always listed the creed and talked a little bit about how we're called to be the church. But I also want to take a moment for a land acknowledgement. And I'm in downtown Toronto. And in Toronto, we acknowledge that we are on the traditional territory of many nations, including the Mississaugas of the Credit, the Anishinaabe, the Chippewa, the Haudenosaunee, and Wendat peoples. And Toronto is now home to many diverse First Nations, Inuit, and Métis peoples. We're grateful for the opportunity to live and work here, and we thank all the generations of people who have taken care of this land for thousands of years. This recognition must also be clearly and overtly connected to our collective commitment to make the promise and the challenge of truth and reconciliation real in our communities. And let's try to live in a way that those aren't just words. There's so much we can learn, not only about our history, but also about different ways of doing things. So with that, we're going to be church together as church treasurers. And tonight we'll cover some CRA developments of a sort, and of course the postal strike, and it's close to year end, so we'll be focusing just some reminders and clarifying a couple of new things. And as always, we'll have your questions. One of the things I'm really pleased about is the insurance program is finally doing what I promised you about 3 years ago. It took us a while to get there, but my church is still paying less now for more insurance than it did 3 years ago, and I hope many of you are in the same boat. So here's one of the first ones going on. Did I have Clyde up for that one?
Yes, you did. Yeah, you had me on for it, so let's talk about it. Tax receipts, or as I like to refer to them, the receipt for income tax purposes, because they aren't the exact dollar for dollar. So the thing we've run into is that the government is now starting to audit them more and more. And one of the big things is who has signed the receipt for you? You might sign 150 receipts, and one or two of your people might be audited and be looking for their receipt. But when it comes to your own receipt, as soon as you've got your name on the bottom of your signature on the bottom of it and their name on the top, and they flag it. Or at least they've been doing that with a number of them. And so we've got to make sure that the signature isn't going to screw up your claim. The reason for that, or not the reason, one of the examples, and we've got it on the slide here tonight, is that the CRA went after one of the Anglican priests on the hook for $5,700
Mm.
because of the rejection of a receipt from his own church. Now, he's not the one that signs these receipts, but because it's his own church and he puts a lot of money into the church, as some ministers do, then they looked at it and said, how can you prove it? And that became a problem. And then they started to refuse the proof. So you've got to make sure the documentation is in place. The receipting, I've always been a little concerned with who's signing it because in our own case, in my case, my wife is the one that signs the receipts for our church. And so that has now changed. And we have asked or authorized another person to sign our receipt, to take our name, our own name off of the receipt for ourselves. The person who signs them has to be an authorized person. So we make sure this is done through the board meeting and hopefully we won't get questioned on it. There's no guarantees.
Thanks, Clyde. And again, this is a low incidence thing. The being audited for tax receipts, then and also catching the person who signs them, and then getting a zealous auditor who questions it. I mean, you need to have all those cards fall into place. But we've had a number of them in the United Church now, and you might want to consider Clyde's approach, which is in my view, the most prudent. Another way is to just delegate the signing to someone else entirely. I haven't signed a tax receipt in years. So that just to let you know that if it were to crop up, your donor, you or anyone else, uh, would just want to have really solid proof. If you had checks, great, but they've even questioned the provision of donor envelopes.
Yeah.
So it's a scrutiny thing.
I was looking at that newspaper report too, and part of the trouble there was that the priest had given cash and had put it in church envelopes, and they wouldn't accept that. I would think it probably would be prudent to suggest that priests should give through PAR. And then you can provide the PAR documents that come through the national office as paper trail.
So that works for ministers, but
Yeah.
for the trustees and or treasurers or anyone signing the receipt, same approach actually. If you give by PAR, it won't be a problem.
Yeah. Question on the chat about electronic signatures. Power Church allows for that. Other programs do too. Will CRA accept an electronic signature?
Absolutely. Frankly, they always have, but they made it more official with the changes in what January, with the budget changes earlier this year, where they finally acknowledged a practice that I mean, think of it anytime we give online, we typically get an instant receipt with an
Yeah,
electronic
which
signature.
is always fine that way.
Yeah. Okay.
So Dave says, who is the appropriate person to sign the receipt? Should it be the treasurer, the envelope steward, the bookkeeper? Who does that?
Uh,
Officially, the treasurer is the one that should be signing them. However, there's no reason at all that you can't delegate that out to somebody else who is properly authorized.
Hmm.
And in our case, as I said, we've got a second person authorized
Hmm.
and they have to be at arm's length.
Hmm.
yeah.
So,
And in my case, we've uh, authorized a paid staff person. Our church administrator signs them.
Hmm.
So moving right along, another one that is a little more common, and there was a surge of this, and maybe it's faded away, but all three of us are here, Clyde, Steve, and I
Yep.
all experienced this in some fashion. So Clyde,
It hasn't gone away. It's still there with TD.
yeah,
yeah, definitely still there. I was in talking to a TD bank branch today because I want to change our accounts for other reasons, but the depositor, it's a must they be named on the account if they come into the bank. However, if you deposit through the bank machine, nobody knows who's put it in there as long as you got the proper card to put in and say deposit. So it's a matter of how you do it. In person, though, they are clamping down on it very tightly. This is not uncommon. It's with TD, it happened to me probably in the area of about 22 years ago.
Okay, so let's back up because there's at least one person who doesn't know what we're talking about. So let me be clear. The problem we're having with TD is that they are refusing deposits from people who go up to the bank wicket. Whether they're cash or check or whatever, they will not deposit it unless you're named on the account. That's my understanding of the problem. It's Clyde and Eric, do you want to say any more about that before we start talking solutions?
That's exactly the problem.
Yeah.
Yep.
We've had deposits refused at the wicket.
Yeah. And we have had reports that that the local banks at least have backed off and had people have to go in and sign in person a bunch of forms
Yeah.
uh, and or add names and that kind of thing. But just to flag that this kind of know your client and concern, I mean, TD was in the news because of their money laundering and stuff, but uh, with more and more things happening electronically, scrutiny is not going to get less.
No.
So here, we're just trying to give you some tips on how you might want to play it.
Yeah. And my treasurer in my congregation is a retired vice president from one of the other charter banks, not TD. And she says this is the tip of the iceberg, that they are all going to move this way.
Yeah.
That
One of the
the
other things,
TD lawsuit, which has cost them big time, has scared everybody.
and I
And
don't doubt it, you put more dollars in, it's going to scare people. But
Yeah.
one of the other things that I have found is we've been cashing checks made out to our cemetery, which is fine. We've got a cemetery account. But as soon as they put on that check now, it's the church name cemetery,
yep,
which is the proper name, but that's not what's on the bank account. So they refuse to cash the check or
I
deposit it.
Yeah.
I had a check over the summer that was made out to FHUC. Then they wouldn't cash it. They
Yep.
wouldn't deposit it because the name of the church is Forest Hill United Church. I had to take the check back. It was from our daycare. It was thousands of dollars. It was a rental check, and they wouldn't deposit it because it didn't.
And if it was a smaller check, they might have
They
let it
wouldn't have
go
looked at
or
it.
might not have looked at it.
That's
So
right.
folks, again, this isn't, this is just a heads up, and some suggestions on how you might want to play it. We don't get a vote on this stuff.
No. There's a comment. There's comments in the chat. People saying their bank account doesn't allow them to make deposits through the ATM because they have an account that requires two signatures. Our account requires two signatures for a payment, but we still have an ATM card that will allow us to make deposits.
Yeah,
Absolutely. That's the way all my clients are doing it now.
yeah,
So if your bank doesn't allow you to have an ATM card for deposits, go and talk to them because the banks, even TD, will allow you to do that.
yeah.
That's right.
Other comments coming up here. CIBC is also asking for depositor names.
Mhm.
Various different things. Yep.
Okay, so again, we're going to bump into more and more of this kind of stuff, and just to be ready and not and have your answer ready. So just a couple of recap type things for 2025 and budgeting and so on. Uh, Employee group benefit and government costs are up to 27%. And Angelica is going to talk a little bit more about those. All the various tools are also online. So with that,
Back up. Sorry, that's too broad. The new treasurers won't know a word that you just said.
oh,
So if you can tell us what this means, that would be if even just give us a paragraph for anybody who hasn't been a treasurer
sure.
for 10 years.
Okay. Thank you. Basically, this is the extra costs on top of a salary that need to be paid by the employer. The first two items, CPP and EI, are paid to the government. They're often called source deductions on a financial statement, but they're part of our staff cost. We also contribute 9% to members of the pension plan. And again, if you have a part-time person who isn't a member of the group benefits plan, then the last four lines here fall away. But overall, if you have a full-time or part-time person on benefits, the gross up for estimating budgets and so on is 27%.
And you said something about treasurer tools. I'll bet you half the people don't know what you're talking about there.
Again, I'm betting half of them, we've got a
Half of
lot
them
of
do, all
regulars,
right,
but
absolutely. But
yeah,
some of
but
the folks
no,
here are brand new treasurers.
no, that's fine. Angelica is going to be speaking to this as well, and we
Perfect.
do have a few links later on in the slides. And
Great.
this is a slide that we've repeated a few times. So it's just a reminder. I actually like to keep this slide, just to remind myself what the numbers are.
Yeah, because it's budget time, everybody's writing a budget. It's good for new treasurers to know that those tools are available at the General Counsel website.
Absolutely. And
So, and
it's
there's Heather asking,
also
is that 27% of all salaries?
that's 27% if someone is a member of the pension plan. And there are adjustments that kick in. For example, there's a cap on CPP deductions and so on, which is all the more reason. If you're a new treasurer, and it's very unlikely, but if you're a new treasurer and you've inherited a situation where you aren't using ADP for all your employees, you should really start, because your predecessor was being penny wise and pound foolish. Because keeping up now with the new CPP deductions and so on that Angelica is going to talk about, you don't even have to know it. All you need to know is that on aggregate, you've got these benefit costs on top of salary, and somebody else is doing all the calculations for you.
Yeah, and when you're doing your budgeting, the tool is at the General Counsel website. Eric will give you the link in a bit, and that will also help you tease it apart if you really need to.
Right. And I think, we've been developing a number of tools, including an updated handbook and more webinars and so on. So do watch for further new treasurer tools. I think the handbook's somewhere in progress. There's new webinars, and Steve is going to speak to the end. There's a couple of new networks, I think, for property and IT, which treasurers often have to worry about as well. So a lot of people working hard to try to make the hard treasurer job easier.
So, and
Okay, so I'm
I
going
can give you a quick update on that. The payroll one is finished and just awaiting the graphics department to do their thing. So we will have a intro to the payroll system up within a couple of weeks, I hope. The
Great.
onboarding for church treasurers is taking longer because I had a computer meltdown in the summer and I haven't had 2 minutes in this fall to recover that project yet, but it's coming. It'll be there, but it is coming.
Great. Thanks, Steve. So with that, if we can turn it over to Angelica for a time to take us through, year end is a very key time for payroll, obviously.
Hello, good evening, everyone. And again, I can't believe now it's year end. And so some of the slides are repeats and maybe just a few reminders and tips as we end our year. And Christmas will be here soon, and I can't believe that. So with this first slide here is a couple of important days with regards to tax forms. Your year-end adjustments, the deadline for that is January 22nd. Please keep that in mind to do your adjustments, not on January 22nd, but try to doing it on January 21st because it's only accepted until 12 noon of that day, Eastern Time, Toronto time. Tax form production, it will be on January the 29th. Year-end payroll reminders is also available on our website, and that's the link in there. And again, if you're new to payroll, please reach out to our payroll staff if you have any questions. Next slide. Again, year-end tips, update any manual payments, deposits, recalls, anything before the year end. Review your trial tax forms, review your CPP, QPP, et cetera, your reports, all and anything to do with payroll transactions. Please kindly review them. The ADP reports for balancing and reconciling government remittances. You must be able to reconcile all your Canada Dental Care Plan coding, which I will talk a little bit more about in the next slide. So you may ask, where can I find these trial tax forms? In this page, it gives you step-by-step on how to access them through your TeamPay platform. If you have any challenges, again, reach out to us and we can walk you through them to find them. It's easy, but if you're challenged, connect with the team payroll staff.
So Angelica, for newbies, and I've never done this, a trial tax form is an unofficial draft that I can go in so I can check the numbers. Is that what you're talking about?
Yes, and so you can access this through the TeamPay.
Right. So I can go and get that for, I mean, if I have authorization through ADP, I can go and
That's
see
right.
what ADP intends to issue and make sure that it's
Yes.
right before the official form goes out, or even before it goes out to the government. And certainly
Yes.
before it goes out to the employee.
Yes, someone's asking if TeamPay is through ADP. Yes, ADP is a payroll vendor. TeamPay is the platform where all of the treasurers input information related to pay
So
for employees and
TeamPay is the
ministers.
portal through which you treasurers can get your reports. And through
But
which
it's a
your employees
platform.
can get their T4s as well. I mean, but that's
That's right.
another
So
story.
it's
But
the payroll platform within ADP, right?
And again, let's all remember that this is the last chance to check your work, because the payroll information is what was input either by you or on your behalf, and with respect, garbage in, garbage out. So
And
this is
this
a
goes, that's right. And this also goes for payrolls that are run as is. And if you don't know what run as is, it's your payroll is automatic that runs on its own every month. And if you're one of those payrolls, please go in and check and reconcile and ensure that you've checked all your reports, your remittances, everything, and you've done your reconciliation to date.
Yeah. Otherwise, folks are going to get their T4 forms and your phone will start to ring. So now, speaking of phone ringing, I've had a number of queries today alone on dental codes, and I keep saying, "Hey, I'm retired."
So this slide, again, it just gives you a note about the dental code reporting that is now on both T4 and T4As. Reporting coverage eligibility as of December 31st, code 1 for employees without UCC benefit as of December of this year. And so code 3 is for employees that have with UCC benefit as of December 31st of this year. Employees who have left and are gone, code 1. If you don't understand this and you require more information and you don't know and you're unsure, please call the payroll team to assist you.
And
If I
one
can insert here.
clarification, sorry, from
If I
today is it's not just former employees. To the extent that we issue T4As for people, if they've accumulated payments over $500 over the course of the year, I understand we need to use the code 1. Basically, they're not an employee, but the dental benefit code basically says they aren't.
Yeah, that's what I was going to cover, because somebody just today, and unfortunately I don't have the paperwork with me, but they raised the question and thought they would all be code 0, but there is no code 0.
Hmm.
One is for a non-benefit person.
I have a question about a T4A. Can I ask that now?
What we're asking people to do actually is put your questions in the chat, And when we come to stopping point, I collect those and pose them to the presenters. So with 155 people online, we're asking people not to open their mics. And we collect the questions that way, and it helps the program move a little more smoothly. So thanks for your question, and it's important. So add it to the chat, and I'll pick it up at the next stopping point.
Again, this is a new year reminder prior to your first payroll in 2025. Employers who have a reduced EI rate, you must advise ADP.
Angelica, I can hardly hear you. Can you get a little closer to your mic, please?
Okay.
Thank you.
How's that? Is that better?
That's better. Thank you.
Okay, sorry. So again, it's a new year reminder. Prior to the first payroll in 2025, employers who have a reduced EI rate, you have to inform ADP by completing the tax profile change form. You can either contact ADP directly, or we can assist you with accessing it, because it's located at the bridge, which is a repository within TeamPay. If you have access to TeamPay, you will be able to access the bridge. Again, also for biweekly payrolls, you have to verify the number of and advise ADP. It may not have changed, and that's fine, but if it has changed or it's new, please inform ADP. And if you're not sure what we mean, please contact us and we can walk you through and assist you in understanding how many payrolls per year you have. Next slide. So this is what Eric was talking about. This is the calculator that is a tool that can assist you in calculating your taxable benefits. If you click on that link, it's located in our UCC website, and it's a tool for treasurers that you can access easily through our main site. Cost of living adjustments, again, pastoral charges. You are responsible for adjusting the minister's salary. You have to go into TeamPay and adjust it. ADP will not do an upload for cost of living adjustments. You have to go in and do it. The 2025 minimum salaries and reimbursement for ministry personnel is also available on the website, and the link is right there. And we can assist you also, again, if you don't know what the minister's increment category is, or you don't know, just give us send us an email, and we'd be more than happy to assist you. So these are the 2025 CPP and I contribution rates, what Eric was talking about, the CCP contribution rate, and it exactly what Eric was saying through TeamPay. It's 5.95%. The maximum contribution for the year is 4,000, but there are some caps, and there are 2 CPPs now. If you make overnight, there's another rate in addition to that. So again, if you're not clear about the caps and you don't know when to put the second CPP contribution, call us and we can walk you through that. EI premiums are now 164, and the maximum is 1077.
That's for the employee, and the employer, there's a multiplier. But folks, just to say, this is for your information. There shouldn't be anybody out there that is doing this stuff, calculating. And there may be some payroll experts who can do it in their sleep, but ADP takes care of all of this.
That's right.
It's useful to know when you're explaining someone's paycheck that, hey, the government deductions have changed a little bit or something. But overall, you don't even want to touch this. You just need to know it exists.
And there's a payroll form that assists you with a calculation. So again, if you don't know how to use the form, we can walk you through and assist you with it.
Okay.
And who is next?
Before you go, Angelica,
Okay.
I got a whole slew of questions here.
Oh no, Clyde, help me, help.
So, and some
ahead.
of this really is from treasurers who are probably a little newer to the system and haven't done this 10,000 times, and so you're talking at a higher level than they're used to. And that's okay. I'm just going to sort of, with apologies to people who have done this for 10 years, I'm going to back you up and just ask the newbie questions. So Carol says, does ADP look after all the tax forms, the T4s? Do they do the issuing?
Yes,
Yeah. So we can confirm the numbers, but ADP issues them and does the reporting
yes,
to the government, and we don't have to do any of that anymore.
no, they do it.
T4As for scholarships. Can I do that through ADP? Do I do it on the CRA website? How do I deal with that? I guess this is a church that gave some scholarships to some students, and they issue a
Not
T4A
through,
on that
yeah,
behalf.
ADP only if the employee is paid through ADP.
Okay.
A scholarship would not be.
Yeah,
So-
a scholarship is a very unusual case and wouldn't, I think it would, I forget the form number even, but that's one that you would need to do manually because it isn't actually pay.
Yep. What are the kinds of T4As that might come out of ADP? Somebody's asking. I mean, would you normally do T4As manually through I mean, my church does. The T4s come through ADP, but all of our T4As are done manually by our treasurer. Is that normal?
Clyde, I believe that that's the way the T4As are generally done.
Generally
Manually,
done, but
correct.
not what I would consider manual because they should be coming out of your accounting system.
Mm.
They are done locally.
They're done locally is what I meant, but I think our treasurer goes onto the My Business account and inputs the information manually there. It doesn't come out of the Power Church.
You could, but well, Power Church doesn't have the connection to the CRA.
Yeah.
My program has connection to the CRA, so I file them all directly.
Aha.
But again, we might be talking a bit of inside baseball here. The standard ways of doing it, if you do have the CRA connection, then online is always the most efficient. Very common is to download a T4A summary form and T4As and literally type them up. There's probably a fillable version of that now too.
There is.
And then ADP does offer a T4A facility, but
For
it's
a
not
fee.
core,
Yeah.
it's not a core offering, but it is for payments being made to incidental payments being made to people, and you could once a year go in and provide that data to ADP and make and have them do the T4A run. There's probably some codes and boxes you need to tick.
And
I mean, if you're issuing quite a few T4As, then yes, speak to ADP. But if you're talking about a couple throughout the year, I mean, you wouldn't want to be paying ADP for the service because I know there is a fee for service, a service fee for that.
and it is easy peasy to do it from the My Business account.
Right.
Speaking as somebody who has held the hand of my treasurer for 2 years now, as she's tried to figure it out, between us, we were able to do it quite simply.
Yeah. And T4As are required for anybody that you have not on payroll, but you have paid more than $500
$500.
within the calendar year for services rendered, basically. I think it's a box 48. I don't have that in front of me, but I think that's what it is. So this would include things like pastoral, pulpit supply.
Mhm.
If you've got people that do services at some of your events and you pay them what you call an honorarium, there's no such thing in the Income Tax Act, so it becomes a payment to an employee for doing something. Then you have to accumulate those and file them as a T4A.
Yeah.
And
How
if we
many,
were
how many
talking,
can you do through the My Business account, Clyde?
I believe it's limited right now at 100, but if you do more than 10 this year, I believe the number's 10, you have to do them electronically.
Okay.
They will not take paper forms.
yeah,
Right.
and I'm not sure that too many people will actually do more than 10, but that's good to know. And for the new treasurers, we have all kinds of advice that we give on this in a more detailed webinar. For example, if you have someone coming in to do pulpit supply, you should immediately get their social insurance number. They may or may not come back, but even if they do 3 appearances all year, that'll take you over the threshold, and you need that information. Chasing it down during Advent or during the busiest season and is just not something you want to undertake. So you want to keep a good record of that kind of stuff. Steve,
Okay.
what else have you got?
I got a couple of short ones, and then I think we need to keep moving on.
Okay, I
So,
was going to cover just one more thing quickly on there with
Okay.
pulpit supply with 2025. I believe the figure's gone to 254. So it would take 2 visits as a pulpit supply, but the form must include anything you've paid in addition, like travel expenses. Because it says everything that you've paid to that person other than reimbursement.
Okay.
And if you don't require a bill, it's not reimbursement.
and somebody was just asking about mileage, so thank you. So if someone does ministry supply, pulpit supply for 2 weeks, you have to file the T4A. Yes, you do.
Yep.
Because you're paying 250 at least per week for pulpit supply. So questions, different questions. Sharon Bliss is having trouble. Their staff can't access the ADP portal. They keep having issues with links. How do they get help?
Contact the pay, we can assist you with that.
So I'm sorry, say that again. I didn't hear you.
Contact with the payroll team and we can assist you with it.
Email links at the end of the slideshow. We'll
Yeah.
get to that at the end. Next question, Jane is asking for that dental code. I've got an employee who's over 65 but has the UCC benefits. Is it still code 1 or is it code 2?
Clyde?
It's not code 2, it's code 3. Code 1 is used for if there's no benefits. Code 3 for everybody else that's on employee or including
Code 3.
pension benefits.
And if we're in the hospital, is not code white, right? Okay.
That's right. Or blue.
I have already emailed my reduced EA rate to ADP and payroll. Is there any more that I have to do, says Ray.
Is there anything else?
Don't think so.
If you've already sent it off to ADP, then no, there isn't. You may want to follow up to see, but no, there isn't anything else.
So double check the next pay period and make sure that they processed it. I had a
Correct.
problem in my with my treasurer accessing ADP. She couldn't get in. We discerned that she hadn't been in over a year, and they cut off her access.
I'm sorry, that's
And I
not
said
good.
to her, "You're supposed to be checking this every few months." Whoops! Did I tell a story out of
No,
out of-
come on
out of
now.
school here? But check the payroll because everybody makes mistakes.
Steve, never throw a treasure under the bus. Never.
You know what? We all make mistakes. One of the things I have learned by working with you guys is that accounting systems are set up because people are human and they make mistakes. And so we have all these checks and balances. And if we don't use them, we're being foolish. But it's no shame to make a mistake. It's just normal. The question is, are we setting up the procedures to catch them?
That's right.
We should
Okay.
carry on, folks.
Okay. Well, just a couple of semi-payroll related things. I had suggested that treasurers subscribe to Connects, and that's not quite how it works. So it's worth bookmarking this. Connects is sent to every congregation, probably to M&P committees and maybe the minister. And it describes things that are going on related to pension and benefits. Your paid people, whether it's the minister, whether you have any others, it'll contain information that's helpful periodically. As a treasurer, I always just I know I'm kind of old school, but I kept a hard copy on file. And to this day, I send out the Connects from 2013 that explains how most people getting paid by a church are part-time employees versus independent contractors. So it's just something to bookmark and or check to see who's getting it in your local context. This was from last time, but phishing scams aren't going away, and I again hear about this several times a week. Everybody has to be careful. with AI, you don't get as many of the usual clues, like
No, I was hearing that this morning.
the bad English and the what, the that kind of stuff. Uh, if in doubt, never click on anything if you have the slightest doubt. And just because it's your minister is asking you for money, doesn't mean it's your minister. So really be careful with email. And that's true. That's advice for everybody, not just in a church context.
To
So
add to that, Eric, the banking information that you gather for potential administrator employees, you must use caution in not doing it through an email. There has been a breach in a few communities of faith pastoral charges. This year alone, I've had 3 instances where they've called us and letting us know that there has been a breach and infiltrated their bank accounts. So again, be very cautious and careful. And like Eric said, any links, do not click on them if you're not sure. And if anything, do not provide banking information through email.
okay.
Always wise to go to the website that you already know rather than following a link in an email.
Yeah, absolutely. Okay, folks, well, I'm going to keep moving, and if there's any questions coming through, we'll make sure we'll pick them up. And just to say, one of the dynamics that's happened over the last 4 or 5 years is so many of us, like we've got a hardcore group of 100 or 150 or 200 that show up with regularity, is you answer a lot of your own questions too. So there was a time when I used to read the chat line by line, figuring out how many emails I had to send out the next day. And you folks are answering almost all of them, or Steve's taking care of it on the spot. So it's really a nice change. Here we go.
Before Angelica goes, I have one last question for her. Differences if you're a church treasurer in Quebec. What do you have to be aware of in that province? Because I know the some of the reporting and stuff is different.
That I'm going to hand it over to Clyde.
Uh-oh. Who doesn't work in Quebec?
No, right?
Yeah, let
I have
me
no work in Quebec, so
yeah.
sorry, I can't help you.
Okay.
Yeah, we do have a few. I mean, the forms are different, and for example, there's a federal clergy residence deduction form, and there's provincial version. Uh, taxes flow through Quebec. So the one benefit that you have that's different is the QPPIP, which I'm blanking on what it stands for at the moment.
Quebec pension plan something.
Well, it's a kids thing, I think,
Oh, okay.
but in any case, have a look
So
at
I
the forms.
can offer Eileen. She's a subject matter expert and has dealt with. So send us your questions and we will be
Perfect.
more than happy to assist you.
And I have a couple of summary slides. I'm just not used to talking to them. So if you were to send an email and to the individual maybe we could put Eileen's email in the chat. It's edai@united-church.ca.
I'll do that.
Okay.
Thank you.
So we do have a postal strike. So we're all going to wait for our $250 checks, or if we're in Ontario or whatever that is. But the just a couple of things. Postal strike used to be a crisis in the charity business, in the fundraising business. I'm not sure that it is anymore. So many of us are receiving money electronically and have made the transition. So just to say, if you're already sending monies electronically, a postal strike just means that, some of us won't get, postcards from our kids or something. It doesn't affect the business of the church, but not everyone's on electronic banking yet. So we'll want to flag a couple of things here. The mailing addresses. I think it is reasonable to expect that the strike might get settled in the next week or so, in some way or another. They rarely want to let it go into Christmas, let alone the proverbial Black Friday, which it already is. So I'll give you the mailing addresses. For the ones we worry about nationally are mission and service and your assessment payments. And we ask folks to tag those with either a DA or MS in front of your, I think it's 6 digits. It's either 6 or 7 digits, your church number in any case. For assessments, we've also done something, it's not even rocket science, but we find, like, you used to send it to the church and literally, our people would need to open the envelopes, need to do all this stuff. And there was a lot of elapsed time and frankly, cost in processing. We're finally using lockbox methodology. So the banks do this for us. They send us pictures of the checks and pictures of any mail and stuff. So this is, if you're using snail mail, these are the addresses, and again, the copies of the slides are available
They're
as hard
already
copy.
posted at ChurchX, so you
Yeah.
can go and get
So
this slide from
so
there.
just a reminder, these are the addresses. Uh, we've had a few questions, and I had my wrist slapped because I was actually going to put the bank information for so that you could go to your local RBC branch. But in any case, if there are folks, if you have access to a Royal Bank and don't want to wait out the mail strike, and I just want to say that's not what I would do, but nonetheless, if you're really keen to pay us quickly and have access to a Royal Bank, you could email assessments at United Church for an instruction. And again, however you send the money, it's important to tag it correctly. Let us know whether it's an M&S payment or a denominational assessment payment. A key reminder on M&S is that we moved to this, I think, a year ago under the leadership of Harry Lee. Now, a reminder that we're asking folks to get their M&S donations at year end into the national office by January 15th in order to count for the 2024 year. And this is something that we've promised our auditors. It's something that enables the year end to flow more quickly. And
So what
you know,
happens if we screw up and forget?
well, I mean, there's a little lag and some reconciling time, in there. But the worst case is that you get counted in the subsequent year. I mean, it's still a M&S contribution to a qualified donee in 2024 on the local books, but on the national books, it might show up for the following year. And then you're caught with these reports that you're having to explain locally. So the best thing to do is just get the payment in. I do remind people and any new treasurers, uh, my church and many, many others used to use M&S for float, which is technically illegal, but it doesn't mean that everybody didn't do it.
Uh-huh.
So the most of your M&S money should be in anyway. Even and anything that comes in December, we ask that you get it to us promptly. And these are, again, for new treasurers, these are designated gifts given to you in trust, and you need to forward them accordingly.
Yeah. So I've got a question before we go on to the next one. I've got a question online. Is there a reason why the United Church, when the donations come in through PAR, why doesn't the general council just keep the M&S portion and send on only the congregational stuff? You're laughing because I know those conversations are happening.
No, let me just say, as the now retired chief financial officer for the church, I didn't think this was a hill for me to die on. And again, honestly, it's because folks have used it for float. It makes all the sense in the world, but we've been doing this since the 80s. And I at least did not have the personal courage to even, I've suggested it a few times. I did. But it's such it's such a big change for local folks that might be managing their cash really close to the edge that I did not champion that idea. And
So
it's because
here's
you get to use it for float for a little while.
So here's my perspective as a minister, which is totally different from
That's
that.
fine. Go ahead.
Okay. Whether you treasurers want to use it for float or not, I think that if the treasurer never sees it, it doesn't really feel like yours. So if you get the M&S givings and then you remit them to the general council office, then it feels like it's coming from your congregation. And if you can go to your congregation and say, last year we gave $8,000, let's see if we can give 8,500 this year, it feels real. If general council just scoops it off the top and the treasurer never sees it and it never flows through the congregation's books, I think it stops feeling like your money. And so I think there's a sense in which we lose track of it completely if we don't pay attention to it. And for that reason, I would say keep it the way it is, because I think congregations need to know that we're part of this enormous organization and that we're helping to pay for it.
If it
Well,
doesn't flow through the congregation books, we can't be responsible for receipting it.
That's right. And then the general council would have to receipt it.
That's
yeah,
right.
no, there are technical points, but believe me, from a cash point of view, my job would have been to change that.
I hear that.
Yeah,
Yep.
I'm
and
glad
I
you didn't.
didn't,
I'm
and I
glad you
didn't.
I'm glad you didn't.
Oh, some modest effort maybe. Okay, folks, I'm just going to move us along a little bit. This is a time of year where my church at least gets a lot of stock gifts. And for new treasurers, excuse me, for new treasurers, there's a huge tax advantage for folks who have stocks that have gone up in value. They can give the entire stock, like a stock, to the church and get a tax receipt for the full amount and avoid the capital gain on their stock. So it's a very attractive thing. And in my church, probably about a third, or even more than a third, of all our gifts come in as big, lumpy stock gifts. Point number one. Point number two, this is the time of year when it happens most. This is a plug for the United Church Foundation. Now, at my church 20 years ago, when I was last treasurer, I went to the trouble of getting our own discount brokerage account. You do have to have access to a brokerage account, and there's a whole bunch of paperwork, and frankly, it's a pain in the butt. If you're only getting very occasional stock gifts, then the best way to do it, and this is not me trying to shill a church function, the foundation is the most cost-effective way to make a stock gift, the United Church Foundation. I've got the fees here. The for Canada Helps, which is a very good organization and provides this service as well. But Sarah Charters and the foundation's team have their handling fee capped at 1.5% or $250, which is really, really cheap for Canada Helps. It's a 3% fee to donations or at least 2.5%. So significantly higher fee at Canada Helps, and they're also the best game in town. They're very good. I'm just saying the foundation's better. If you want to make a gift through the foundation, basically, the forms are online. You complete them. You have your broker send the stock to the foundation. The foundation sends the money to your church if that's where you're designating it. But just to say, stock gifts are a big deal in some places. In others, folks are used to we're used to putting money on the plate. But even my mother-in-law, who's now 100, when she was in her late 80s, for tax planning purposes, I suggested that she give some of the Bell stock that she'd owned forever as a way to save herself literally hundreds of dollars. And so that's all I'm going to say about stock gifts. If you need to know more about it, just Google United Church Foundation stock gift or anything like that, and it'll take you to the forms. On my own for my own church, we keep the donation form right on our website, because we literally get about a third of our gifts that way. Okay, statistics. A couple of things. I've got the usual deadlines here in March for filing statistics, and then for any new treasurers out there, the all congregations are asked to file a statistical package on a whole bunch of things, some of which are financial. So it is the treasurer has probably about I don't know, about 10 or 15 numbers that they have to dig up and report on, but maybe a few more. But there's a lot of stuff on just the membership, how many Sunday schools, uh, a whole list of questions. And we collect that data, and it drives a couple of things. It drives decision making in a big way, uh, because we know what's happening to churches overall. And secondly, it also establishes the assessment rate because we have a very transparent formula for calculating the assessment, and it's based on revenues reported, and that can move up and down depending on your situation. So one heads up, we have always mailed a few thousand of these forms, even though more than half of the folks were always going to file online. But the plan is to start the transition to fully electronic and get people used to being on Church Hub and so on. So that's just a bit of a heads up because we are very dedicated to try to reduce our footprint and our greenhouse gases by 80%. So we do anticipate in January devoting some time with Susan Jackson as a guest speaker. She wasn't going to be one tonight because she has laryngitis. And
Oh, she was at the party this afternoon. She sounded, you could hardly hear her.
yeah, so just to say, if you have any questions, send them in so that she can target her presentation next month. So Clyde, a couple of questions and that you've had recently.
Yeah, one of the things that comes up frequently, and especially at this time of year and drags out even into March, April, May, depending on when you're working on your T3010. Questions in there ask you to report the assets not used for charitable purposes. When this first shows up in Schedule 6, line 4250, it actually spells out that you're to report on lines 41, 50, 55, 60, 65, and 70. The total of it goes into 4250. That is very limited in what they're actually looking for. Then the new form that came out, and I think it's Schedule 8 last year, when we start looking at disbursement quota, it referred to lines 5900 and 5910, which are on Schedule 6. However, when looking at disbursement quota, they do not want you to use the number that is on line 4250. And it's very clear in the instruction book not to use that number. If you go to the T4033, which is the instruction booklet on how to fill out a T3010, it refers to disbursement quota calculation, and it tells you how to get to it through the two lines there that I've mentioned. It's not direct. You have to go through a couple of steps. But it explains what the property not used directly in charitable activities or administration includes. So for the disbursement quota reasons, property includes real estate, investments, or other assets, and may include cash and savings accounts, inventory, stocks, bonds, mutual funds, GICs, land, and full or part of buildings. This gives you a little bit of concern. The reason they go into the dollar values of the investments is because they look at it, and they being the CRA and the administration of the acts that they deal with, look at it as being that the funds that invested are not being used in charitable purposes because they stay stagnant amount reasonably, other than interest or growth through the investments. And so they want to know what these amounts are and how they change over from year to year. And that's how the disbursement quota becomes a factor, or comes a factor out of that calculation. And you use these numbers from the 5900 and 5910 on the Schedule 8. And it's very different than what you're reporting in line 4250. And I have had a couple of churches who did their own T3010s this year, and they have had questions about it because they used exactly the same number. So it is being watched.
Yeah, and just to say, folks, again, for any of those, I'm anticipating Steve's reminder of new treasurers. Charities are required to fill in an annual, it's called an information return, which is a T3010. And this is something that if you're new, you'll have to have done by next June. And Clyde and I will be recording a line-by-line walkthrough webinar on how to do this early in the new year. So there are webinars on this from early 2024 when all the rules changed. And we're going to have a fully up-to-date webinar to talk people through this. This is just sort of a heads up for the regulars who've been doing this stuff.
Thank you. I think that's enough for now because really people aren't going to be doing the T3010s until spring. So
Some do them in January, February, but not many.
The Keeners.
You got it.
the ones who aren't sure certainly won't be.
No, they won't. They're not likely move that quick. The next thing that I want to comment on, and is an email I got, said that it must be the time of year because we've been seeing a lot of questions around the sale of a church building. The UCC national interpretation is that there is no GST or HST on building sales. That's the information we have, and we believe that the exceptions that are laid out in the RC 4082, which is the GST information for charities document that outlines this, there's exceptions there, and we take and look at those to see that we can make sure churches do not fall in that area. So it's just, again, a heads up. It only affects you if you're at the sale of a church building. And most of those only occur if there's been an amalgamation. There are a few with church closing, but most of them are amalgamations where there's excess space. So it's not a major issue. Going on to the next one, this is more in the statistical forms. What should be or should not be included when calculating the amount of the revenue for outbound ministries.
What's an outbound ministry?
An outbound ministry was what I was just about to explain.
Thank you. I should shut my mic off till you're done, right?
Read on, Steve, read on.
An outbound ministry, the way I look at it, is anything that you're sending money to or working with outside of your own church building or congregation. If you are raising funds either through regular donations or on a special appeal to go to, and I'm going to use the example from my own church, the Blue Door, which is the organization in York Region in Ontario that operates an out of the cold program for homeless people. We raise funds for it because we have them sleeping in our church building three nights a week. But that becomes, even though they're sleeping there, they pay rent for it, but our fundraising is an outbound amount.
Sure.
And it's that sort of thing. If you're doing the event totally inside, then it doesn't count. But if it goes out to an organization beyond your church walls, then yes, it's considered outbound ministry. Now, in the statistics, we don't have to include in that line the M&S because that's already accounted for.
Got it.
They know what it is. It's only the ones that they don't know. There are things like refugee sponsorships. Some churches do a lot of this, some do very little, but that is a major fundraiser for outbound activity. Uh, there's others.
But lots of churches raise money for the local food bank, or
Absolutely.
they raise money for white gifts at Christmas time.
Exactly. All of those sort of things.
Yep. Thank
Okay.
you.
So my turn for uh, a little bit, I guess. Just a reminder, and again for you folks, uh, United Church congregations are absolutely unique for a bunch of reasons, but from a compliance perspective, it's because unlike your local Anglican church or Presbyterian church or Catholic church, you're not incorporated. Unlike them, you have a distinct charitable number as opposed to being Anglican Church 001, Anglican Church 002, Anglican Church 003. And that combination of factors means that we're a square peg in a round hole when it comes to uh, banks, financial institutions, granting bodies, even government bodies. Uh, who look for legal documents. It's very common to ask for your church bylaws or your
Letters of incorporation.
letters patent, and so
Yeah.
on. And and these days you'll need that for amalgamations. You'll need that for name changes. Uh,
Applying for
look,
government grants.
all those things.
Yeah.
So just to say, this is a service provided out of the national office. And you'll bump into it for a whole number of different reasons. Mary Worrell and Maria Pimpinella look after those things, but if you send it into the finance department, uh, uh, and Harry Lee's email and phone number on this as well, uh, we'll get those for you. It's a routine administrative task. It's a letter signed by the unretired chief financial officer of the church certifying that you are quote unquote in good standing. And of course, you do need to be in good standing for that, but we've got a pretty broad definition at the United Church. If you're not in bad standing, you're in good standing. Um, okay. Now we already fielded a fair number of questions on
I have
the
I have
payroll.
one more, and then I
Okay.
think we can carry on. And it's about it comes from Kerry, who is saying that uh, when he's reconciling bank statements and that kind of stuff, he's getting payments from the United Church of Canada for a variety of different things, and they all say the same thing. They don't differentiate what the payment's for, and so it's brutally difficult to reconcile the bank statement because he's got somebody on medical
Whichever
leave and
care.
somebody else doing something else, and it's just, can't we get different codes for different kinds of payments to make their lives easier?
Uh, well, there's a couple of things that are a factor there, but this is an annoyance, and it is something that I think Harry and team are working on. Some of it's driven by system limitations and what have you.
Yeah.
But just again, for the benefit of everybody, there's about 10 different ways that the National United Church might send a local congregation money. And the we won't, and in many cases it'll be money that you won't even know what it is or are expecting. So for example, there might be an annuity that someone has bought with your church as the beneficiary. There's no reason you would even know that until the person dies and suddenly we send you a residual.
Yep.
Okay. Or from the group benefits side, if you're expecting a restorative care payment as an insurance reimbursement, that would come. Or if there's a grant, the foundation and the church are trying to get the communication related to an electronic payments out, like to have an email get out to the congregation. But this is a frustration, and ideally, the way we do it would be to have more codes than we do. So, just to say that if you have a case where you don't know what the money is, the best thing to do is send it to the finance team at the national office. I get those emails. I used to get those emails all the time. I would forward them to Diane Hacker, but since both of us are retired, you now need to send them to Harry Lee, and he will do whatever he does with them.
Email at the end, or you can send them to me and I will forward them along.
Yeah, but this is you don't want these, Steve. This is a routine accounting inquiry,
Sure.
and as a practical matter, we have to get better at for the reasons that were mentioned.
Carrie says last year she had 2 employees simultaneously on restorative care and she could not tease apart the payment. She didn't know how much was for each.
Well, and that's where she shouldn't have to.
Yeah, I
Yeah.
agree.
Yeah,
Thank
I
you.
think my understanding is that the payment that payment should come through with there are emails, but those emails might go to someone else.
Yep.
Uh, and
Probably M&P,
yeah,
not
if there's
treasurer.
if there's a concern, uh, you know, email the finance people. At the end of the day, they're checks, right? So if you don't know what the check is for, it's an electronic payment. Uh, the finance people, it's their job to find out.
Right on. Thank you. That's all I got here. Otherwise, we've talked about it all the way through.
Okay, so this is a repeat slide, but just very quickly on insurance. And again, for any new folks, uh, if you're insuring your home, you almost certainly are it's recommended to you, and you almost certainly are recommending insuring it for what's called replacement value. So if there's a fire or a catastrophic event, your house is replaced, period. That may or may not make sense anymore in a church setting where our buildings might be way bigger than we need or even want or would rebuild. So there's been a lot of conversation, regulars on this call. I'm not gonna belabor it tonight. If you want to know more about it, UCC Protect United or UCC Protect, just Google that on the church website, and there's tons of information on this. But the bottom line is we have now what's called a captive insurance arrangement where the national church invested significant monies and time, frankly, to try to see if we could reduce the insurance cost burden. And that's been in place now for about 1,500 properties, and more than half of the congregations across the country, and more people are looking at it all the time. We also had, this started effective December 2022, we also had some real just brutal service challenges. We were overwhelmed by the demand and poor data and various other things, but it's now performing the way it was always imagined. The policy renewals have happened well in advance. There was communication in September and October for a December 1st renewal. People aren't getting that from their other insurance companies. We do offer a couple of ways of having reduced coverage. You could have half of your actual replacement value, and if you're looking for a new business quote, those are now turned around in a very timely basis. I've seen them turned around same day, but it should be same week if you've provided most of the information. One big thing for those of you who are participating in the program would be working with regions in 2025. We do have access to an appraisal service for those who want appraisals, and in some cases might need to get an appraisal, to have sort of a regional volume processing thing. It's a small shop, but the guy who literally has been doing this for years. He'll show up in Toronto, for example. He was referred to me by Susan Jackson. He books enough business where he might have to do like 80 appraisals, and he'll come and just live here for a month to do them. And so we're going to look to coordinate that kind of activity. We've been test driving it this year, and there'll be more communications at a regional level to see if there's enough interest to schedule. These are discounts that could get you as much as half the cost of an appraisal because you wouldn't be paying travel costs. So this program saved congregations $2 million in the first year, close to that again in the second year. That's across the system, of course. But it's and I always knock on wood on this because it does depend on good claims experience, and frankly, there were some significant claims this summer with the Jasper fire and so on, and
Yeah.
yet the increase was still only a 2.5% rate increase plus inflation. So right now, and again, knocking on wood, it's doing what I hoped it would do before I retired. So we list a couple of, this is a repeat slide for the regulars. There's ways you can reduce your premium. Most of the premium is relates to property, so increasing your deductible is one way to do it. You you can have up to a 15% reduction if you decide that your replacement cost would be half the size of the building. And that's very common these days, where you might have a building valued at 4 million, but you'd only rebuild at 2, something like that. A lot of folks are choosing to delete the organ or stained glass because they probably wouldn't uh, bring them back if they were lost. So there's a variety of options on how you can save insurance, and I won't belabor those points today. Just to say that if you gave it a try or gave up, it might be worth another try. So treasurer tools, very quickly. This is one of them that we has proven to be popular, and the feedback has been quite positive and generous. And we will have and continue to refresh webinars on the key tasks, things like your annual charitable return. Just before I retired, I did a couple more on it, amalgamations and closures and so on, special situations. But as long as there's interest, we're going to keep doing this thing. And so far there is. Any treasurer out there, particularly a new treasurer, you must be on Church Hub. That is how we maintain a database of who we communicate with. And at a minimum, we want to know every treasurer and every main contact at the church. That could often be a minister in a smaller setting. But this is also a database for all ministers, employees, a variety of things. But this is where you will find your assessment invoices, your church statistics for the last 25 years. If you're looking at anything from a strategic point of view, very important. This is one of the online accounts that you just can't escape as a treasurer. Now, Steve, you got a couple of groups building right now that I thought you should mention.
I do. I need to tell you that you folks have been the guinea pigs, and these webinars have proven to be so popular across the church that there are other church leaders who want to copy what we've been doing. So there are 2 new networks that are just getting underway this fall. I don't know whether they're interesting to you in this call, but if they're not interesting to you, and they might be, they will certainly be interesting to somebody else in your congregation. So pass on the word, particularly if you found these treasurers webinars helpful, pass on the word to the person in your church who would find this also helpful. So this first one is called Church Tech Best Practices. And they are going to be meeting approximately monthly, not exactly, but they have a asynchronous forum that happens in between meetings. They're bringing in people to talk about worship tech and computers in churches and accounting software and all of the kinds of computer and other tech that we need to be thinking about as we manage 21st century churches. So there are, I'm sure, geeks and nerds in your congregation who would really love to roll up their sleeves and get involved in this network. And it's modeled on the webinars for church treasurers. So pass the word along and be evangelists for us for that one, if you please. And the next one is for anybody who's managing a church property. And again, that might not be you. It might be your trustees. It might be a property manager. It might be your church administrator. But that's a place where people are talking about how to repair stained glass windows and boilerplate leases for tenants and how do you deal with old buildings that nobody knows how to clean anymore, and what do you do with steam boilers and all of the kinds of joys and struggles of maintaining a church property. One of the things that we find in my congregation and probably in yours too is that nobody on the property committee has any experience maintaining a commercial sized building. If we know buildings at all, we're homeowners and we understand our own homes. But trying to figure out how to scale up to a commercial sized building, not to mention a historically designated building, there are all kinds of extra complications and costs and specialists. Like in my congregation, it has taken us 4 months to find somebody to come and repair some lead glass windows because there's only a handful of specialists in Toronto who know how to do it, and they are all over their head busy. So we've had cardboard over some of our lead pane windows since somebody played hockey and broke 3 of them in June. Irritating. This is a place to talk about those kinds of things and get some ideas and some advice and maybe just some sympathy and a shoulder to cry on. So if there's somebody in your congregation who is doing that job and would find these sorts of webinars helpful, I commend them to you. I need to say I'm not hosting either one of those. I can't be on every webinar. And so Eric grabbed me for these, and I have tapped other people on the shoulder to lead these other two. But
So Steve,
I am helping with some of the background admin, and I'm around to offer tech support and help for all of these kinds of projects. So this is a way in which the whole interconnection through webinars and other tools is growing across the church. And it's partly because you folks have found these ones so helpful that we thought other folks in your congregations might find other topics equally useful.
so Steve, how do folks, get on the list or whatever? Is this going to be a sign up through ChurchX
Sign
or?
up through ChurchX. You'll see these are being, I think they're still being advertised in the United in Learning e-newsletter that comes out every 2 weeks.
Mhm.
But you can also find them there on the main catalog for the United in Learning program at ChurchX.
Great. Okay.
And they're free.
Yeah. United Church people love that.
Yep.
Okay, so again, we're wrapping up here, folks. So if there's more questions, get them into the chat. This is the usual list of contacts and reference points in terms of subject matter. And again, for any new folks, we try to have sort of a specialist help desk type function for things like if you don't know how assessments work, a really popular one over the last 3 years has been our CRA help desk. We're trying to, we have experts like Clyde and Rose Camborne who can make sure that people are set up and registered and know all the different ways that screws up and has to get fixed. Of course, we've got the payroll team on here again as well. And Angelica, just a quick question: Do the payroll team phone numbers change with the system phone upgrade?
No, the 1-800 remains as is and with the extension of 2029.
Okay, and I asked that because on the next slide I do have new phone numbers for Angelica and Harry Lee. If I have this right, the national office and which also supports the regional council offices. We've had internet telephone for ages, but we're as opposed to cost saving and functionality and all that good stuff, we're going to a Teams phone system, as I understand it, and therefore
Yeah.
we have new direct lines for
It-
people.
It is no different for the treasurers. It's just different for the staff in terms of how we answer the phone.
Yeah,
And coming very, very soon will be a help line for United in Learning. So right now, people get United in Learning help by writing an email to me. We will have a telephone number for you as well. So
great.
that's almost, in fact, I was sending off all of the auto attendant messages to our staff this morning so that they can program those in and then we can start publishing that number. So that'll come too.
Great. Okay, so folks, there's the contact information, and this is where I stop sharing and see if we've got any new topics or questions from folks.
I do have a few questions in the chat, and we have 6 minutes left in our covenanted time, folks. So if you've got other questions, put them in the chat right away. Still haven't received paperwork for a December insurance renewal. What do we
Uh,
do?
Well, send an email either to Harry or to myself. My email at the church is still active, so it's ematheson@united-church.ca. And all the folks who pay their premiums directly, some of the corporate stuff is still being processed. But if you didn't get it, it's possible someone else did. We'll try to fix that.
Thank you. For budgeting purposes, what's the expected cost of living allowance for next year?
I'm gonna have to go from memory, but I'm pretty sure it's 3.
That's right.
3%.
So in the chat, responding to that question, there's a link to the minimum salary guidelines for 2025. You can also search those on the General Council website. Good thing to know, even if you're not paying minimum salary, because it'll show you the percentage increases. Does UCC Protect provide abuse coverage?
Yes, it does, and that's one of the again, it's really important to compare apples to apples. Lots of local mutual companies don't, and even the biggest competing offerings companies like Ecclesiastical typically increasingly have it as a separate policy to be applied for. However, just to clarify, you do need to have the appropriate protocols in place. There's a couple of questions that you need to say that you are following United Church safeguards.
Thank you. So there's also a really good webinar about the UCC Protect Insurance Program on the ChurchX course page for you. It's the June 26, 2024 recording, and we had staff from Hub on there talking about all the varieties of different insurance they're offering. So if you weren't there for that and weren't aware that it happened because, God takes a holiday at the end of June, go and have a look. It was worth watching. Assessment dues for 2025, where do we find them?
They're online. Certainly the amount is online. The invoice typically is going to be added or I'm a bit dated here as a retired guy, but the invoice is typically added at the beginning of January. However, the projected amount, which is going to be the invoice amount, is already there on Church Hub. And if you're paying electronically, that amount will be updated, and whether you're paying monthly or quarterly or whatever, that will all be automatic, which is frankly another reason to do it.
And I can report that the moment that we filed our statistics, the invoice was available.
The projected
The invoice. I downloaded an invoice and put it in the treasurer's email box.
okay, well,
So there
maybe
you
they
go.
got better.
No, Clyde says no, but it's I'm pretty sure it said invoice on it. Anyway, the amount is there, and it
Yes.
was calculated automatic. Now, if you made a mistake in your filing, you can deal with all of that. But the amounts are there and available through Church Hub. So where on Church Hub? How do people find it?
I don't have that slide in this deck, but
Okay.
we've had it in pretty well every other deck. If you go into Church Hub, though, if you can log into Church Hub, the tiles are pretty self-explanatory.
It's
Thank you.
assessments. And I think it might tell you another tab up there in that same area usually near the right-hand side of the tabs.
I was going to say top right corner is what I'm remembering.
Yeah.
Right. And if Rose Camborne happens to be on this call, and I don't know that she is, you might see something in the chat box in the next few seconds.
Last question on my list. Do United Church congregations in Ontario have to register under the Ontario Not-for-Profit Corporations Act? I
No,
think the
because they're
answer is
not.
no, but would
No,
like
because they're not
confirmation.
incorporated.
We're not incorporated. Perfect. Postage for first class mail is going up 25 cents in January, so buy your stamps now.
Okay.
Says somebody
I
online.
did not know that, but that's
we
okay.
need these webinars just to kind of keep each other sharp, right?
I don't even know what a stamp is anymore.
Permanent stamp is good with you buy it now, you can use it next year. we need to draw this to a close. It is 29 minutes past the hour. We're just hitting the time exactly. Angelica, Clyde, Eric, wonderful as always to work with you. This has just been so much fun and
And I'll just flag that
so useful.
Susan Jackson, as predicted, has put the how do you do the assessment in the chat box.
There
And
you go.
and Laura's telling us to buy a roll of 100 stamps at Costco, which is what I do.
I always buy my stamps at Costco because they cost $80 instead of 100. It's I don't understand how they do it so cheap, but it's the cheapest place to buy stamps for sure.
Hey, they sell. I was there today. They're selling wine and beer now. Look out.
There you go. Christmas is coming.
Eric, will we have another in December, a webinar, or
No, we
should
don't.
we be saying Merry Christmas right now?
Yes, well, yeah, the best wishes to everyone for Advent blessings and so on. And we are, I think, planning to pick this up in January for some work on statistics, and that'll also push Clyde and I to do that annual thing, the annual charitable return.
And I was
Thanks,
talking
everybody.
I was talking to Dave Jagger today and suggesting that we need 10 minutes of income generation conversation at each of these webinars as well. So that will be coming your way as well. And Dave is
Great.
thinking about what he wants to add into our webinars. So
Okay.
So, Merry Christmas and Happy New Year, and have a good year end. And don't
And-
forget that if you
and
run
thank
into
you.
surprises, all these folks are here to help. And we'll look forward to connecting with you again in January.
And thank you for being a treasurer, because we don't always get thanked.
That's right.
You know, this is the kind of work that is absolutely essential to the functioning of the church, and most people have no clue what you do and would never want to take it on if they had even a tip of the iceberg sense of it. So thank you.
Okay. Are we going to do the
I'm going to
smoke
take the
thing?
leaders off into a breakout group, and we
Okay.
will say goodbye to the rest of you, and we'll look forward to seeing you next year. Bye for now.
Right.